Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So we are from group 4. My name is Wike Safitri and my friend is Pratama Anshori. So in this occasion, we have been asked by our lecturer to analyze the cases of assessing speaking. So there are two cases that we have to analyze, which is case 1 and case 8. So me and my friend have decided that we are going to separate these cases into two parts, which is case 1 will be analyzed by me and case 8 will be analyzed by my friend Ari. Let me start it by explaining you the first case or case 1. So it is very difficult to isolate oral production tasks that do not directly involve the interaction of oral comprehensions. Only in limited contexts of speaking such as monologues, speeches, or telling a story and reading aloud can we assess oral language without the oral participation of an interlocutor. And while speaking is a productive skill that can be directly and empirically observed, those observations are invariably colored by the accuracy and effectiveness of a test taker's listening skills, which necessarily compromise the reliability and validity of an oral production test. So another challenge is the design of elocution techniques. This is because most of speaking is the product of creative construction of linguistic strings. So the speakers have to make choices of the lexicon, structure, and discourse. And if the goal of the teacher is to have test takers demonstrate certain spoken grammatical categories, let me give the example like the stimulus that the teacher designed must elicit those grammatical categories in ways that prohibit the test taker from avoiding or paraphrasing and thereby dodging production of the target form. So as tasks become more and more open-ended nowadays, the freedom of choice given to test takers creates a challenge in scoring procedures. In receptive performance, the elicitation, stimulus can be structured to anticipate predetermined response and only those response. So in productive performance, the oral or written stimulus must be specific enough to elicit output within an expected range of performance such that scoring or rating procedures apply appropriately. One example is in a picture series task, the objective of which is to elicit a story in a sequence of events. Test takers could opt for a variety of plausible ways to tell the story, all of which might be equally accurate. So I will explain you another brief example because in this case we have to offer practical examples of one of the challenges in assessing speaking. So as we know that since the purpose of teaching English in the communicative era is to improve the students' abilities to speak in English, so many teachers try to devote their teaching to achieving this target. However, problems arise when they assess the students' speaking skills. So the example that we will give to you is about the scoring. So Bahji stated that the student become less motivated and uninterested in the classroom learning. That's why these factors as well as others contribute directly to the existence of various problems in language learning, especially in speaking. So the practical examples that we will give in is, let's think that So as been said before, there are three important issues that the teacher might face in assessing speaking, such as the interaction effect, the elicitation techniques, and because those two issues, it makes that it is important to carefully specify the scoring procedures for a response so that ultimately the teacher achieve as high a reliability index as possible. And for the reliability, it will be explained by Ari in the next cases. So scoring is hard because we have to accurately measure the student fluency criteria and their accuracy criteria. And let me give you the example of these cases. So in the other part that we have to measure about the speaking skill of the student is the communicative ability. It includes the length of the utterance, flexibility to the speakers of differing levels, and for the fluency criteria, we have to analyze their appropriate speed, pauses, and their discourse strategies. And for the accuracy criteria, the first one, there is vocabulary. So we have to analyze that the student use a wide variety of words and phrases or use new vocabulary used in the class. And grammar, we have to analyze how accurate and appropriate was the student's grammar. And for the pronunciation, we have to analyze was the effort that made to use correct intonation or was the accent a barrier to communication that used by the students. The other challenge or part that we have to measure is about the non-verbal strategies. So in this part, we have to measure or analyze that did the student supplement oral communication with appropriate gestures, eye contact, and body language. So why is scoring is hard? Because we think that no best way to assess the speaking. Why? Because each format of assessing the speaking has its unique form. Let's take example for pronunciation. So as we know that there are so many pronunciation how we have to pronounce the word. So it's hard to measure the pronunciation of the student, is it correct or not. So that's why scoring is hard in this case of assessing speaking. So I think that's all from me about the first cases, and the next case will be explained by Ari.
Okay, my name is Ari Pratama Anshori, and I'm going to explain number 8 exercises. Several scoring scales are offered in this chapter, ranging from simple to 1-0 or 0 score categories to the most elaborate rubric used for the OPI. In group, each assigned to a score scale, evaluate any strength and weakness of each. Pay special attention to intra-rater and inter-rater reliability. Scoring specification must be clear in order to avoid reliability breakdowns. A common form of scoring and simply indicates a 2 or 3 point system for each response. Simple score categories 2, 1, 0, or 0 use for repetition tasks as written in this chapter. 2 given for acceptable pronunciation. 1 given for comprehensible and partially correct pronunciation. O or 0 given for silence and seriously incorrect pronunciation. The longer the stretch of language, the more possibility for error, and therefore the more difficult it becomes to assign a point system to the text. In such a case, it may be imperative to score only the criterion of the task. For example, in the sentence, when did they go on vacation? Since the criterion is falling intonation for a web question, points should be awarded regardless of any mispronunciation. And for the elaborate rubric, the example is in our book, page 149. Interoperability was computed for each of the speaking components, such as vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, and fluency. As well for the total rating, which was composed of the mean of the rating for speaking component. And for the intra-rater reliability is the student were computed between two ratings of the speaking skills by the teacher on grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, and fluency.
So I think that's all from our group, and we are so sorry if they are mistaken from our explanation. Thank you, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.